If you like horror, hit that notification bell, smash that like button, and push that subscribe button now.
What's the boogeyman?
Hello, Sydney.
Welcome to my nightmare. We want the man who did this.
Welcome to Nick Push's Horror Channel.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy Monday. I'm Nick Push. Thanks for joining me tonight, talking It, the 1990 miniseries. Gonna kind of let people funnel in a little bit, if anyone shows up. If not, that's cool too. But gonna let people funnel in and then start talking about this movie. This is a kind of a new thing I want to start doing. I want to start talking live about specific movies. I got a whole format planned, which we'll get into. But I want to get you guys involved too. So at some point here shortly, I'm going to let you guys vote. I'm going to put up a poll in the chat, and you guys can vote on the movie I do next week. I'm going to try to do this on a weekly basis. Tentatively, that's the plan. You know, sometimes life happens, but I'm going to try and stick to it. Sometimes it's hard, but I really do want to stick to things. You can't hear me, bud? You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you let me know if you can hear me in the chat? Oh, see? Bud's messing with me already. Oh, you asshole. Oh, kidding me, dude. I have all these internet problems lately. All this shit go wrong. Something's going right. And, you know, one of my partners in crime decides to fuck with me. You just fucking threw off my whole flow, dude. I'm gonna fucking kick your ass. But anyway. Thanks for that, bud. I'm excited to talk It tonight because, you know, I get so used to talking about Halloween, Scream, you know, Friday the 13th. You know, I haven't really talked Nightmare in a while. But I'm so used to talking about all this stuff. It's nice to talk about other things once in a while. So I'm excited to do this tonight. So, It 1990. Before I get into that, guys, I'm going to put up a poll right now for anyone that shows up where they can vote on what we do next week. Here's kind of what I was thinking. So, this movie came out in 1990. I figured let's hit up 1991 next. So, I'm going to give you guys 4 options of movies, and they're mostly horror-ish movies that came out in 1991. And, yeah, you guys can vote on that, and then the next week we'll try 1992 and so on. So gonna hit up the 90s. 90s is kind of a forgotten decade. So, you know, everyone talks about the 80s all the time, and then, you know, that when the year 2000 hit, you know, you had torture porn with Saw and Final Destination. I know that came out in 99 and all that shit. So I want to hit up the 90s, especially the early 90s here, because the early 90s is really forgotten. You know, the early 90s is probably arguably, you know, the darkest time for horror movies. So before I get into this, let's see who we got in the chat here, since Bud threw me off. We got Zombie Apocalypse Cherokee 92. What's up, man? Says, hey Nick, it's funny I don't watch horror movies a lot, but every time I do lately, you live stream. I'm watching The Blob 1998 right now. Last time I was watching Friday the 13th Part 8. Dude, The Blob 1988, it's a remake, obviously. It's good. I'm a big fan of that movie. Haven't seen it in years, but I remember liking it a lot, and it's kind of always been on my peripheral to watch again. We got Bud here, obviously, who apparently couldn't hear me, asshole. Allie's here. What's up, Allie? Yeah, so... Ellie says that was a good one. You and Ronnie, Nick. Yeah, Ronnie also has had his own internet issues as well. But so far, everything seems to be going good. Bud says, I love the Stephen King miniseries. The Langolers was great too. I haven't seen that yet, so we'll see. Maybe I'll put that on my list. But all right, guys, I'm gonna read off my list that you guys can choose for next review, and then we'll kind of get into the movie here. So the list of movies for 1991 that you guys can vote on that I do next, it's actually a decent list for 1991. We have Freddy's Dead. Please, God, don't choose Freddy's Dead. I think Freddy's Dead is probably my most hated movie of all time. But we got Freddy's Dead, Silence of the Lambs. Obviously, that's a classic. And then Child's Play 3. Another one that's kind of an interesting one in the Child's Play franchise. And then we're going to go with a little bit of horror comedy with Ernest Scared Stupid. I love Ernest, especially Ernest Scared Stupid. So bear with me for a second. I'm going to put up this poll here. So I tried to do this earlier so it could be there. Be ready, but apparently YouTube does not allow you to do that. So we had Child's Play 3. We had Ernest Scared Stupid. Silence of the Lambs. Apologize for doing this on the fly. And Freddy's Dead. So whatever the consensus is at the end of the stream, that's what we will go with. Which poll is up. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about it here, guys. So it is such an interesting movie because, like I said, it was a mini series that came out on ABC in the year 1990. 1990, I'm probably just about too young enough to remember, but 1990 was such a different time for TV. Back then, you had, Twin Peaks was around. That was kind of captivating the nation. And then they came out with this miniseries. And what they did was they cast all these big TV stars in this movie. The adults in this movie are some of the biggest stars in TV. And when I say stars in TV, back then you had stars that were either in movies or in television shows. Nobody crossed over. Once you made it into movies, for the most part, obviously there's exceptions, but once you made it into movies, you didn't go back to television. Television was a downgrade. It's not like now where you got Kevin Costner in a TV show, Yellowstone. You got all these big stars going to TV shows. It's not like that, or it wasn't like that back then. So what they did was they grabbed a bunch of stars of TV shows, like John Ritter, like Tim Reed, Harry Anderson from Night Court. All these guys were TV stars, and they grabbed them for this miniseries. And obviously, their kind of white whale was Tim Curry here, which we'll talk about Tim Curry in a little bit. So it was such a different time for TV, and they got this miniseries together, and it aired on 2 nights. I don't know which nights. I'm guessing like a Sunday and a Monday. I think that's kind of how they used to do these things. But they got it together. Stephen King was pretty much at his apex. He was in his prime back in 1990. He wrote it in, I want to say, mid to late 80s when he was hopped up on cocaine. But yeah, it was such an interesting time for TV, and they got all these stars together. They grabbed these child stars. They weren't really stars at the time, but they grabbed these random children, and they made this movie and this miniseries, and it really became, at the time, a water cooler event. If you don't know what water cooler means in TV, Google it, because it was a thing back in the day. People used to meet at work at the water cooler and talk about, what they saw last night. I don't know what the last water cooler TV show would be. Probably, maybe Game of Thrones, but probably Lost, in the late 2000s, I would think, was probably the last real water cooler show. But as for me, I've always loved this movie, and I'm going to get into why in a minute when we go over the categories and things like that I'm going to break this down. But I always loved this movie as a kid. I think there's a lot of things it did better than the movies that came out recently, but it was really hamstrung by this TV show format and budget and everything like that. It was directed by Tommy Lee Wallace, who, those of you who don't know who Tommy Lee Wallace is, I don't want to talk Halloween, but he directed Halloween 3. He is pretty much responsible for creating Michael Myers' mask. But yeah, he directed this movie. Obviously, like I said, it starred all these TV stars at the time, starred all these kids, and then they got Tim Curry, who was a big fish at the time, to play Pennywise the Clown. So when I was a kid, this movie terrified me. Rewatching it as an adult, which I'll talk about in a little bit when we kind of break down the format. But rewatching it as an adult, it really... there are some things that didn't age very well for it. But for me, it's got a lot of nostalgia, so I'm going to kind of, grade it accordingly. And what they did with this is they broke it down into 2 separate parts. Okay, I'm just going to kind of give a brief overview, guys, and then we're going to get into the categories and talk about some of the funny and, cool stuff about this movie. But they broke it down into 2 parts. You had the child part, which was first, and then the adult part, which was second. I'm not going to go over the full plot detail because I think it's pretty much common knowledge at this point, what the movie and what the story of it is, especially now that the new movies came out. But, the kid section is a lot better than the adult section. And there's reasons for that. A clown terrorizing a bunch of adults can look kind of silly, and it can be kind of silly. So the child section just works a lot better. And yeah, so all right, so we're gonna get into the format I'm gonna do for this, and then we'll get to the chat. So we're gonna break this down into a few different categories, guys, and feel free to comment in the chat your answers to these questions. But I'm gonna break it down. I'm gonna give you guys an MVP of the movie, most valuable person. This is going to be the person I think, is the best part of this movie. It could be an actor. It could be a director, because I'm going to use the same format moving forward with whichever movie I do next, which right now it looks like, obviously not a lot of people here, but it looks like Silence of the Lambs is beating Ernest Scared Stupid. I kind of want Ernest Scared Stupid to win. But we got an MVP of the movie. We got an LVP of the movie, least valuable person. That one, I could rant about this person for a while because he drives me nuts. Then we have a best scene and worst scene of the movie. I'm going to talk about, what I think is the best scene or my favorite scene, and then obviously what I think is, the worst. And then I have an unsung hero. Kind of goes without saying, this is going to be someone that I think is really good in this movie, but they don't get a lot of props, character, an actor, someone like that. And then I got the funniest moment. Depending on the movie, this could be a hilarious moment, or it could just be, kind of like a tongue-in-cheek type moment. The dumbest moment of the movie, and then I'm going to rate it, okay? Basically what I did here was I wanted to kind of come up with a format that I haven't seen on YouTube. So I created these categories, right? It's kind of a small ripoff of the Slaughtered Lamb podcast. So if you guys don't know who the Slaughtered Lamb podcast is, it's Frank and Darren. Okay, they have a series that they do called The Best and Worst of. Okay, so they go over their best character, their worst character, their best quote, their worst quote, their best moment, worst moment, etc. And they go back and forth on it. It's fantastic. Okay. My original thought was, I'm going to steal the fuck out of this idea because that is brilliant, okay? And then I thought about it, and I'll be honest. Frank scares me, okay? I'm not worried about Darren, As far as Darren goes, I would just steal his idea, okay? We kicked his ass 250 years ago. We'll kick his ass again. We'll throw his tea in the harbor if Darren has a problem with this. But Frank's a wild card, okay? I don't know Frank. He seems like a great guy. I've heard he's a great guy. But he scares me, so I didn't want to totally steal their format. So I just kind of slightly ripped it off a little bit with my own twist to it. So that's what we're doing today. All right, let's see who we got in the chat, and then we're going to start going through this list here. So, talking about water cooler, Allie said Walking Dead, Blake said Breaking Bad. Those are probably... Those were probably water cooler shows. It's hard now too, because back in 1990, You know, there was network television. There wasn't even really. I mean, I'm sure there was cable. I don't know when cable became a thing, but in network television, you know, everybody, the whole, you know, country or whole world had, you know, just a few channels to watch, right? So, you know, most people were watching one of, you know, 4 or 6 different programs that were on that night. Now, you know, even Breaking Bad and stuff comes out, and you know, it's one option of a gazillion different options. So yes, I think those were water cooler shows, but not to the extent that, you know, Twin Peaks was, or, you know, the It miniseries was. Popping the Popcorn's here. Hey, Popping the Popcorn, how are you doing? Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Shape of Horror Podcast, The Sopranos. Yep, that would be another one. Blake says Taxi Cab Confessions. Oh, man. All right. So looks like people are voting. Blake says he's never seen it, but his kids love it. You should watch it, dude. It's good. It's really good. Blake says they're stealing this format. Well, I kind of half stole it, Blake, myself. So, you know, you can steal it. All right. Let's get into it. So, my MVP of this movie. This was an easy one, guys. The MVP of this movie for me, and I think for probably 99% of people, is none other than Tim Curry. Tim Curry is fucking brilliant as Pennywise the Clown in so many ways. This picture I have up right now is from the beginning of the movie. Okay? He is right before this sinister face he's making. He does he sees a little girl on like by her tricycle or some shit like that. And, you know, he's, you know, making clown noises and shit like that. And, you know, he waves to the little girl, you know, with a smile on his face. She waves back. Like, literally, second later, he has this face. He just fucking transforms from friendly clown to fucking terrifying nightmare. I mean, look at his face here. Tell me how sinister he is. And he is turning it on like this throughout the movie. You know, he was so good in this movie that they really, really fucked up the end of this movie because they didn't realize what they had. They didn't realize how good he was going to be. We're going to talk about the ending. But it's just like, he just dominates this movie. When you think of Pennywise the Clown, you know, you think of Tim Curry. You know, Skarsgård did a great job in the new It movies. I really think he did. For me, it's always going to be Curry because I grew up with it. And that's just the way we are, you know, as movie fans. I think, you know, whatever you grew up with, that's kind of your person. So it's nothing against Skarsgård. I think he's a great Pennywise for those movies. And they're two different Pennywises. But Tim Curry really just transforms this role, makes it his own. You know, he goes from friendly to sinister, you know, so well. It's incredible. There are so many scenes in this movie, you know, even besides the one I'm just mentioning here. You know, there's a scene here. Let me pop it up here. You know, the famous, you know, I don't want to say iconic because talking about Georgie, the Georgie scene with, you know, him killing Georgie in the rain during the daytime. The reason I don't want to say iconic is I feel like iconic is just thrown around, you know, like it means nothing these days. So I don't want to use iconic because I don't think it's quite at that level. But, you know, I'd say it's a rung below that level, you know, as far as, you know, scenes in horror go. But it's a famous scene, you know, where he's being friendly to Georgie. And then, you know, it's almost like, you know, when Georgie's talking to him about, you know, things that float, you know, it's almost like Tim Curry's getting off on it. You know, he's like, oh yeah, they float, Georgie. We all float. You know, it's like he's getting off on this shit. You know, he's getting off on killing this kid. And it's just really creepy and sinister. And especially in a lot of the kids' scenes, you know, like I mentioned earlier, the kids' part of this movie is far superior to the adult part. But, you know, when he's terrorizing these children, you know, whether it's Bill, whether it's Eddie in the shower, you know, with that crazy stop motion animation, or not animation, but the stop motion graphics that they had to use, you know, when he is terrorizing these children, he is absolutely horrifying. And you think about it from like a 10-year-old perspective, a clown, and, especially, this movie takes place in, I think, is it the early 60s, late 50s, something like that. It's fascinating. So fascinating how well he does, and fascinating how scary he is. All right, so Tim Curry is my MVP. Before we get to the LVP, let's see what we got going on in the chat. Mark Mack is here. Mark Mack, the first member of this channel. Mark, if you're still in here, I owe you an apology, man. YouTube did not tell me till a week later that you joined, so I will make it up to you. You can contact me on the membership page and we can talk about it. But I apologize. I wasn't neglecting you or anything like that. I just didn't know you joined. And thank you for joining, buddy. Appreciate it. Let's see what else we got going on here. Popping the Popcorn says, I love Tim Curry. Yes, Tim Curry's great. He's great. Obviously, made super famous from the Rocky Horror Show. And then Clue, he was good into. Home Alone 2, even Home Alone 2 he's good in, But for me, when I think of Tim Curry, I think of Pennywise. Blake says, hey, Nick, does this clown make the top 10 horror killers? Also, that's an episode. I think I actually had him. So I think I did that like a year ago, Blake, where I did my top 10 favorite like horror villains or something like that. And I think Tim Curry's Pennywise was like number 9 or number 10 or something like that. So yes, to answer your question. Mark Mack says he was great in Scary Movie 2. Yeah, that's right. He's hilarious too. Ellie said, what does Ellie say here? Number 1 is art, though. I've only seen Terrifier 1. I still haven't seen Terrifier 2. They're not. It's almost too brutal for me, which is just crazy. The Terrifier movies, they're almost just too brutal and too over the top. But I'll definitely give Terrifier 2 a chance. Terrifier 1 was interesting enough just because, for me at least, it was unexpected. The level of gore and shit like that. Let's see here. Blake says he doesn't watch horror movies unless Ronnie makes him. Yeah, Blake's get ready for October, man. If you guys are doing your 31 straight days of horror again. All right, let's get into the LVP of this movie. Get rid of this slide, and we are going to go to the LVP. The least valuable person for me is Adult Eddie. This fucking guy drives me up a goddamn wall, guys. Absolutely up a fucking wall. Like, absolutely ridiculous. I don't want to spend too much time on him, but I just find him annoying as hell. There are so many scenes, where, he breaks down and just like cries, or he's just, pardon my language, he's just a pussy. He is a pussy, which is ironic because at the end of the movie he mentions that he never got any of that. So, but yeah, there's a scene where he's, they're at the dinner scene when they all meet up together as adults for the first time since their childhood, and they all meet up, and he's like, oh, I think I remember who Pennywise is. Big teeth. Scary clown, and he just starts crying, and he's still using his inhaler. Nothing against inhalers, guys, but he's still, using that as a crutch. I just think he's horrible. There are people that steal the scene in movies. This character, as an adult, just drowns the scene for me. I think he's fucking horrible, and I don't want to waste any more time talking about him. He is that bad to me. He just ruins. He doesn't ruin the movie for me, but I want to fast forward through every scene the guy is in because he just drives me nuts. So Adult Eddie, he is my LVP of the It miniseries. Let's get into something more positive here. Let's talk about the best scene in this movie. Best scene for me, we're calling it Book Pennywise. So let me pull up a slide here. About halfway through, or maybe 2/3 of the way through the kids section of this movie, the kids have all kind of told each other that, they're being terrorized by this clown. It's similar to a Nightmare on Elm Street movie where, he's terrorizing each of these individuals, separately. And nobody's saying anything because they think they're fucking crazy. Well, these kids all come together, and finally they start talking about it. They think they're losing their minds. They think it's in their imagination or something. But he's terrorizing all of them. So they all talk about it, and they finally come to the conclusion that this is real. Well, Mike here, who's the African American character there, Mike had just joined the group, who they call was it Lucky Seven, the Losers Club, right? He just joins the group, and he's got this book of like history, and it's just a picture book, right? So they're flipping through the book, and through the book you see that throughout the history of Derry, where the town where this movie takes place, every 30 years or so, something horrible has happened. Whether in the olden days there was some horrible fire or disaster or something like that, and each page, has a picture section of what happened. Okay, they don't explain where the book came from, I don't think, or it might have came from his dad or something like that. But, he's flipping through the pages, and in the drawings of these disasters, you see a clown. And you're like, there's that clown again. There's that clown again. Well, then they flip to an actual photo, okay? And as they are, looking at the photo kind of comes to life, and people in the background start moving, and it's almost like I don't know what year it is, but it almost seems like it's like early 1900s, okay? Early 1900s, and people start moving, and all of a sudden in the background you see a clown, okay? And the clown's just going about its business, like doing flips or something. And all of a sudden the clown like sees them looking at him, and it comes right through the fucking pages. It's horrifying. The look on Pennywise's face is absolutely ridiculous. It is horrifying again. And he basically tells these kids, I'm going to kill you all. I'm everything you've ever been afraid of. It's fucking absolutely fantastic. So for me, that is the best scene in this movie. I know a lot of people would pick the Georgie scene. For me, it's this scene. The Georgie scene is very good. It might actually be better in the original, but the CG ruins it not in the original, in the new one, in the 2019 one, in Chapter 1. The only thing is the CG in that movie really takes me out of it. I like the practical, even though they can't really show anything in this because it's network television as far as gore and things like that. I prefer, the feeling of this movie, even though you can't see the gore. So Book Pennywise is my best scene in this movie. Let's see. Bud says they call themselves the Fancy Talk Podcast. Yeah. We are going to be doing the Fancy Talk Podcast tomorrow over on Bud's channel, The Shape of Horror Podcast, by the way. We're going to be doing the Fancy Talk Podcast, and tomorrow's category is best moments in the Scream franchise. So make sure, if you guys are Scream fans, you tune into that. Go to the Shape of Horror Podcast, subscribe to that channel so you can participate, and we're going to give our best moments in the Scream franchise. Okay. Let's get to the worst scene of this movie. Moon Pennywise, I'm calling this one. What the fuck am I talking about? Look at that. Okay. Terrible. That is bad. And it gets worse from here. Okay. So I didn't mention it earlier, but as the kids are dealing with all this stuff, they are being harassed by bullies, and the main bully's name is Henry Bowers. Okay. Henry Bowers has a run-in with it when the kids defeat Pennywise at the end of the children's section of the movie. And he basically ends up in an insane asylum. Okay. His hair turns white, and when I say bully, he's a pretty big bully. He's like up there with like Biff Tannen and shit like that. He's essentially like trying to kill these kids at some certain points, But so he is in an insane asylum, and when the adults come back to Derry, Pennywise realizes he needs some help. Okay, because when all these people are together, they're at their strongest. So he needs Henry Bowers to help him. So he recruits Henry Bowers to kill them. And he recruits him while Henry Bowers is in his insane asylum. Pennywise starts talking to him, like in his mind. And then he appears on the moon in this fucking horrible picture here. It's absurd. And then it gets even worse because, he helps Henry Bowers escape from this. And the way he helps him escape is, and I'm not making this up, folks, he turns into a giant dog wearing a clown outfit and attacks the guard. Just fucking terrible. They couldn't have come up with something better. I can't remember how it is in the book. Maybe it's the same, but come up with something better. Like that scene is horrible. I don't know if anyone's seeing this scene in this. Anyone in the chat, let me know if I'm on an island here. Is this scene as bad as I'm saying it is? Am I overreacting? I think it's bad. If you think another scene is worse, hold on. It could be in the dumbest moments, because we're going to talk about that. But Moon Pennywise and helping Henry Bowers escape as a dog in a clown costume is absolutely ridiculous. Let's talk about the unsung hero of this movie. For me, this was easy. The unsung hero in this movie is Tim Reed. Tim plays adult Mike. Let me pull him up here. I think he's fantastic in this movie and extremely underrated as far as this movie goes. If you're like me, you'll remember this actor, Tim Reed, from being the dad from Sister Sister. Great show. Great show. He was good in that too. But Tim Reed, as adult Mike, is great in this movie. He is the one that brings all the adults back to Derry to fight it. He is the only one that stayed in the town. One cool aspect of this movie is, so all the 6 others all leave. They all leave Derry, right? None of them have kids, and they all are, unusually successful. You got Bill, who is kind of a riff on Stephen King, who's a famous writer. You have Eddie, who owns a limousine business. You have Bev, who's like a fashion designer. You have Stan, who, I don't know what Stan does. Stan's fine. He's doing well. You got Ben, who's an architect, who turns into John Ritter. And he loses weight and turns into John Ritter. And then you got Eddie, who played by Seth Green as a kid, young Seth Green, and Harry Anderson as adult, is a famous comedian. There's actually a funny line when not Eddie, what the hell is his name? Seth Green's character, Richie. When Richie gets called back to Derry, he's doing a stand-up, right? And his agent is talking to him. He's like, I gotta go back to Derry. And he's like, well, who's gonna do the Tonight Show? And he says, I don't know. Have Leno do it. So it's like a little funny throwaway line where if he didn't get that call, he'd be hosting the Tonight Show for the next 30 years or something. I thought that was clever. But Tim Reed brings all these characters back, and none of them really remember. They remember they made this promise, and they're drawn to go back, but they don't remember why until they kind of get there. And Tim Reed kind of brings it all together. He's got a calming presence. He's kind of investigating these murders because the cops aren't doing anything about it. Tim Reed is great in this movie, and he has an arc too, because there's a great line where like I said, everyone else is successful. He's not. He's a librarian. Nothing against librarians. There are successful librarians or anything like that. But he's poor. He mentions that he lives in Poor Town. He basically, for all intents and purposes, sacrificed, his life to bring all these people back 30 years later and defeat it. So I think Tim Reed is great in this role, just like he was, good and great in the movie or the TV show Sister Sister. If you're around my age, you should remember that show. It wasn't as popular as some of the other shows, but it was popular enough for you guys to know who Tim Reed is. So I think he was great. He is my unsung hero. All right, funniest moment. There's a few to choose from for me. I'm going with one that always made me laugh as a child, and that is "Kiss me, fat boy." So in this scene, and it's ridiculous. This is just childish fucking humor. It's a killer clown. Come on, we got to have some childish humor. Hold on, before I continue, Bud just commented on the vote. I want to see where the vote is for the next movie. Freddy's Dead. Oh, guys, don't vote for Freddy's Dead. Like I said, that's my most hated movie of all time. I don't even know if I can have an MVP of that. But yeah, this is a close poll. Freddy's Dead's at 41%. Silence of the Lambs at 29%, Child's Play 3 at 18%, and unfortunately, Ernest Scared Stupid is at 12 with 17 votes in. Man, okay. Let's get back to this. I got distracted there. But there is a ridiculous scene. And like I said, it's in my funniest moment because it's kind of ridiculously funny. So everyone's at a hotel trying to come up with, and this is the adults section, trying to come up with a plan to stop Pennywise, okay? And whether they even want to. And they have to go back to their rooms. So they all kind of go separately back to their rooms, or a few of them do. And John Ritter, who plays adult Ben was the basically the fat kid as a child, goes to his room, and it pretends to be Beverly Marsh, who was the girl who Ben was a member of the group, the girl who Ben was basically in love with, and he still is in love with, played by Annette O'Toole, who I just found out the other day is Michael McKean's wife. I didn't know that. But anyway, she basically says she knows Ben wrote this poem, and and they kiss, and as they're kissing, John Ritter looks in the mirror and sees that Bev's torso is wearing Pennywise's clown outfit, and he's not kissing Beverly Marsh. He is kissing Pennywise, as we can see here, has lipstick all over him, and he just says, "Kiss me, fat boy." It's so stupid, but so funny. When I was a kid, I used to just replay this part all the time on my VHS tape. Yes, I have this on VHS. I still have it on VHS. But when I had to rewatch this, I had to fucking rent it on Amazon because I don't have it on DVD or Blu-ray. But yeah, it's such a stupid, a stupid funny moment. It always made me laugh though, so I had to have it as my funniest moment. So yeah, let's move on to dumbest moment. Oh God, dumbest moment for me, spider shit. They really fucked up here, man. They really, really fucked up here. Okay? The ending of this movie, I don't want to go beat for beat, but essentially the adults go back in the sewer where they first defeated Pennywise. The adults sans Mike, who Henry Bowers stabbed, and Stan, who committed suicide before coming back to Derry. Okay? So the other 5 adults go back down in the sewer. Okay? And Pennywise at this point has captured Bill's girlfriend, who is played by Olivia Hussey from Black Christmas. Cool. But anyway, he captures her. So Bill goes running off. They all are back together, and they're battling Pennywise. And they kind of have to they find his lair essentially down there. Okay, and this is where I'm saying that the makers of this movie, whether it was the producers or what, or maybe Tommy Lee Wallace, I don't know. It's almost like they didn't know what they had in Tim Curry playing Pennywise here, because they are a little too true to the book, where instead of the adults defeating Pennywise, they defeat this spider-looking thing, which is ridiculous. It's looks like something from Jason and the Argonauts or something, but it's bad. And because essentially Pennywise is an evil entity that takes the form of this clown, okay? And this is the real form, the real solid form of this evil entity. And it's essentially straight from the book, okay? They even make fun of it in the It Chapter 2 that came out a couple years ago, where Stephen King, of all people, is a shop owner, and Bill comes in and he goes, "I like your book, I just don't like the ending." So they make fun of it, and they still fuck that up too with spider shit. But essentially, instead of defeating Pennywise, they defeat this big spider, okay? And they do it essentially by pushing it over and just punching the hell out of it and ripping its heart out. So dumb, so fucking dumb. I don't understand why they couldn't have realized, partway through this movie, or 2/3 of the way through this movie, that holy shit, Tim Curry is so awesome here. We have to pivot here. This is not the ending we want. They need to defeat Tim Curry somehow. They did not have to be that true to the book. So for me, this was dumb as fuck. And it doesn't ruin the movie, but it's close to ruining the movie. And, I have a lot of issues with the new It Chapter 2, mostly CG related and trying to be too, too cute, too fun, too funny with shit. Almost like a modern day blockbuster when it should be a fucking horror movie. But as far as this ending, it's bad. It doesn't get any worse than this, and it's so unfortunate because, up until this point, I thought they did such a great job. Yes, there's issues. A lot of issues have to do with things being dated, but for me, this knocks this movie down a lot. So that's it, guys. That is essentially the format I'm going to use for, talking about movies. It's not going to be, I hate to use the term review until I think of something better. That's what I'm going to use. But let's get to the rating. So, like I said, I have a lot of nostalgia with this movie. Where it is better than the new It's for me is just kind of an ominous vibe, a creepy feeling throughout this. And a lot of that is the setting. It was set in, the late 50s, early 60s when they're kids. So a lot of it deals with, things we don't see very often. But for me, it's just got a creepy, ominous vibe throughout this movie. The tone of this movie is excellent. But like I said, a lot of aspects are dated these days. The fact that it was made for TV hurt this movie. If this was a movie that just came out in 1990 in the theaters, I think it would have fared a lot better. But for me, I still have a lot of nostalgia. So my ranking for this movie is a 7.5 out of 10. I like it a lot. I can't put it higher than that. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on this movie. Let me know in the comments. Are you guys a fan of this movie? If you've seen it, tell me, what you like, what you don't like. We're going to go into the chat for a few more minutes and then be done. But first, let's check who's winning the poll here. As soon as I sign off tonight, guys, and it's going to be in like 10 minutes. As soon as I sign off, this poll's closed and the next movie for next Monday is chosen. So, let's see here. Oh, you God. 18 votes. Freddy's Dead is leading the way with 39% of the vote. Silence of the Lambs would need, essentially, I would think, 2 votes to tie. Because then it'd have 40%. Then they'd essentially both have 40. Yep. So Child's Play 3 and Ernest Scared Stupid are tied for last with 17%. So, if you haven't voted yet, make sure you vote. Let's see what we got going on in the chat here. Looks like Allie and Bud stuck around through my rambling here. Bud says that vote. Oh, yeah, I know. Ellie says, looks like the Crystal Ball and Wizard of Oz. Yeah, talking about Moon Pennywise. Absolutely. And then Allie says this part isn't even scary. And she would give it an 8. Hey, thanks, Allie. I'm glad. I was worried people were going to, give it like a 4 or something. I always wonder if you show this to, someone that hasn't seen it before, someone that might be, desensitized to shit, what they would think of it. I don't think they'd think too highly of it. I keep saying it, but I don't mean actually it. Blake is here. Blake, get a life. Shouldn't you be watching Monday Night Raw or something, man? I'm kidding, Blake. Thanks for being here. But yeah, so that is it. Like I said, looks like Freddy's Dead is going to win, barring a miracle here in a moment. That's it for me tonight, too, guys. I have a early meeting tomorrow. Make sure you tune in tomorrow on Bud's channel, The Shape of Horror podcast. We're going to be talking Scream. We're going to do our top 10 moments from the Scream franchise, and it's going to be very interactive. Ronnie's here. Ronnie, what's up, man? Says Tim Curry is very creepy as the clown. Dude, yes, he is. There's just something about him. The way he can go from, friendly looking to sinister is pretty impressive. And that's all Tim Curry. Skarsgård in the new ones, like I said, I think Skarsgård actually did a great job. He really, really did. And it's a different Pennywise. But for me, Curry's the man, and the new one just had too much CG for my taste. So we'll see what happens, guys. It looks like Freddy's Dead is going to win the poll, unfortunately for me, because like I said, might be I think it is my most hated horror movie of all time. It might be my most hated movie of all time, which could make it fun. You might get some some Nick rants next week. But I'm going to try, for the most part, to keep these objective and keep these relatively positive. You know, look, at the end of the day, guys, I come on here to talk movies. I really do. And it's fun to talk movies, okay? I don't want to take everything super seriously. I want to find things and have fun with them, okay? That's one thing I like about watching Ronnie and Blake's show on the All the Good Names Are Taken podcast. I'll even watch with a movie I haven't seen before because they just talk about the most random shit. Ronnie will pull up a slide, ask Blake a question about it. Blake will make a witty comment, and they'll both laugh. It's fun. It's fun. I just want to have fun talking movies, okay? Ronnie says Roseanne and Tom Arnold in Freddy's Dead. Yeah, they are. Johnny Depp, too. Adam Howard's here. What's up, Adam? How's it going? No pun intended. Yeah, man. It was going better till I saw Freddy's Dead leading the poll for next week. So, yeah. But no, it'll be fun talking Freddy's Dead. Like I said, don't forget tomorrow night, guys, on Bud's channel, The Shape of Horror podcast. Join Bud and I as we are going to be talking Scream. Probably might be the last time for a little while we talk Scream. You know, until Scream 7 theory videos come out. Stu's alive! You know, all that shit. But yeah, that's it for me, guys. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate you being here. As always, thanks, and I will see you guys next time.